We're getting close to starting. The TwinRays will be right here with us in a moment. And welcome. Welcome to a beautiful, beautiful special event. Deborah and I are really excited about it. And we enjoy doing these smaller, more intimate events as Zoom meetings so that we can see you. So I want to encourage you to turn your cameras on. It's really lovely to see all of you. And for those of you who want to keep your cameras off, that's okay too. But it's lovely to see beautiful souls that are part of our Global Peace Tribe. And I'll turn over to Deborah for a moment for anything she'd like to share.
Yeah, just sending you all so much love for today. These are incredible times, that we're all going through. I know every one of us is, kind of having our set of challenges that is helping us grow to the next level, whatever it is, as well as the whole world. But these are also amazing times of opportunity to grow and reach out and understand and connect in this way. I don't think this event would have been possible at the level that it is without all that happened in the last year and a half that has really brought a virtual world together in so many ways. And so we want to drink the lemonade with sweetness, that we're all able to gather from all over the world and affirm the higher evolution that is happening now, that the TwinRays stand for and hope for. So I know you're here because you have an inner passion for that as well. So I honor you. And this is going to be a really, really special, beautiful 2 hours with them and with all of us. So thank you for being here.
One of the things that I just want to kind of establish is today we're talking about relationships. And one of the things that has been a joy in my life recently has been spending time with the TwinRays. Deborah and I spent about a week with them up at their beautiful home temple in Ashland. So we got a chance to really see them several hours a day and see what they're like. They're always like that. They really are. They are always dressed in white. But they also are always really in this state of presence and graciousness and love. And I asked them hard questions. I was like, okay, come on, let me ask you guys, what's it really like? And I said, are you guys really always like this? And they looked at each other, they just smiled and said, of course we are. And so that's really what led to Deborah and I wanting to do this event today, because I'm sure going to talk about spiritual wisdom and all of that, but we're also going to really focus a lot on relationship, because they are exquisite models of what it's like to be an awake human being, and also what it's like to be an awake human being in partnership with another person. And they live together, they work together, they are domestic together. And boy, whether we're single, I'm single at this time in my life, but whether we're single or in a relationship, what a beautiful model they provide of how to be in relationship and to stay in that state of love, in that state of respect, in that state of mutuality that I observe. So I'm really excited about kind of having them share how they do that. And may it be a model for all of us in all of our relationships, whether it's with our family members, whether it's with our beloveds, friends, or lovers, or wives or husbands. And there they are. So they just came in. I'll add them as panelists. There we go. There we go. Once they start there we go. Welcome.
Welcome.
Hi, beloveds. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody.
Blessings, beloveds.
Mm-hmm. So Deborah and I are going to turn our cameras off in a moment, or at least not turn our cameras off, but put the full spotlight on Shekinah and Sananda. They're going to lead a meditation. Just a couple of things. We are going to take questions and answers. So please send your questions in the chat box. You can either send it privately to Deborah or myself, or you can send it to everyone. And we will copy those questions. We're going to put them in a Google Doc, and then we'll share them with Shekinah and Sananda. And again, for Shekinah and Sananda, while we were waiting, I was just talking about how exciting it is that today's focus is really all about relationship, and how two people that you're modeling can be awake, but also be in a divine relationship, that you're married, you live together, you work together, you create a lot together. And so the dynamics of relationship are a big part of what we're looking forward to hearing about today. So I just want to say thank you for being such beautiful models for me and for all of us of being an awake human being and being in a divine partnership and doing it so beautifully. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It is our honor to be with you all and impart any wisdom and experience that we can. We're here to do exactly that with a heart full of love. So thank you.
So as we begin, let's just drop in so we can just connect into the field together. If you feel cool, just close your eyes and place one hand on your heart or both, whatever feels right for you. Take a deep breath in to the center of your heart. As you breathe out, let the week fade away. Everything that's been accumulated from the week that you've experienced, just fade away with your breath. Any tension in the body, let that also fade away. Every time you take a breath, just allow your body and your awareness to soften and melt into this moment. Take a breath into the center of your heart, breathing sacred life force into your beautiful heart, and allowing the year to fade away. All that has been accumulated throughout this year. Allow that all to fade away into the background. You can bring it back later if you wish, but for now, just let it all go. Take another deep breath in. Let the last 10 decades fade away. Let it all just release. And with the last inhale, this intention, just allow all moments in your life fade away so you are fully and utterly present in this moment now. The only moment that matters is now. Breathe into that truth. Breathe into your heart and fill your being with life force. And just a gentle sigh. So just releasing all that no longer serves to bring you into the one presence, unifying our fields, unifying this beautiful container so we may relate to each other in the highest light, in the highest love, in the highest truth.
Place your hands on your precious hearts. May all that is shared be spoken from the heart. May all that is heard be witnessed from the heart. May any preconception be released in its most grand expression and expanded throughout, so that new information, new eyes can be given for today, a new heart to feel with, even greater love, even deeper compassion. And as we are here today to share and support all of your hearts, may your hearts know that divinity is in every moment. It is with every breath, and it is within the choices that are made when there are choice points that come about. Choose love always. And that is what we will be sharing about today. It's how to always do your utmost to choose love in relationship.
So as we begin, and we speak of relationships, you cannot have relationship without communion, communication. And that's ultimately what relationships are based on, is communication. And it first starts that communication within inside you. How you communicate to yourself. How you drop in and connect with yourself. And it starts with every moment, every day. When you wake up, do you rush out of bed? Do you rush into your day? Or do you spend a moment to connect in, to drop in that sacred presence with your most intimate self? And when you start deepening that communication with your heart and with the very depth of your true nature, and you start connecting with that in the silence, what happens is the minds and the heart both begin to purify when there's a communication from love. So really, the first step with relationship is a step within yourself and really identifying that communication style. And there's three main ways that this can show up in your life. There's three main attributes and tendencies that show up in how one communicates and how one relates to their life, how one relates to their own mind and their own psychology, how one relates to others and society. The first way is the tamastic tendency. Tamastic is more the shadow tendency, where the reason why we use the word shadow is because it's not quite illuminated. You don't quite see everything as it is. There's still a tendency to see half-truths, to see personal biasms and personal conflicts. And that may be based upon your connections with your family, society. But basically, it's the conditioning, it's the programming and conditioning that holds that shadow tendency.
And this is also about victimization. This is when one feels victimized. This is when one says, you made me do this, or I did this because of you. It is not taking ownership and responsibility.
Yeah, it's basically a fear state. It's fear, and how we laugh about fear, and is, it's that's nature of the false evidence appearing real. If we create an acronym around it, it appears to be real, but it's false in the thinking, in the perception. And so that shadow tendency is very much based in that fear response. And so in order to overcome that, we must choose love. But in order to know what love is, in order to choose that, we must learn what love is. And sometimes through our experience of life, through our experience with others, there is a tendency to contract instead of expand. And those are the pieces that one must learn how to communicate with first. Those aspects are the first level of communication that you must communicate with. And in that communication lies acceptance, accepting what was or what is and whatever shall be, unconditionally, just accepting it, not trying to change it, not trying to fix it, but just accepting it. And when you do, what happens, you evolve from the first level of the shadow tendency, and it comes into more the rajastic, which is more the gift. That's the gift that reveals something, where you see, oh, I see how that had to happen like that. I know why this happened, because there was something I needed to learn. And you see it actually as a blessing and not the opposite. And so that's when you start seeing the blessings in life. And when you start communicating with yourself from that level of really acknowledging that you did all that you could do with all that you had in that moment, or if it's someone else, you transcend that victimizer, and you see that actually the great blessing. And so when you start communicating with yourself to see the blessings of life, just to have breath, just to have experience, just to have a body, just to have a life, when you start experiencing the blessing of that and communicating to yourself in gratitude, that gratitude starts lifting up your sights and your vibration to then take you into the third state, which is more the sattvic state. And the sattvic means the pure state, where you start experiencing reality as it is, in no friction. You start experiencing bliss. And bliss is not just a euphoric feeling or mental activity of loving thoughts. True bliss, true meaning of Ananda, is embracing the totality of the spectrum of life. Good, bad, beautiful, ugly, light, dark, all of it, and noticing the perfection within all of it. And so when there's that sattvic communication with yourself, how you communicate with yourself is actually how you communicate with your world. So the inner reality is actually the outer manifestation of your perception. And so it all starts with that first simple communication and seeing what level or what way in which you're communicating and relating to yourself and to your experience. And there's even a fourth state that actually also transcends the sattvic state. But before we go there, it's important just to see how there's a tendency on the human psychology. Tamastic is very pain, pleasure dominant. Desire, aversion. I desire this, but I avoid that. That's the tamastic nature. That's a shadow tendency, not quite seeing it as its blessing yet, seeing it in duality. And then we get to evolve once we learn the takeaway from that, which is acknowledging the blessing within all moments. Then it lifts you up into seeing the gifts of the rajastic, the nobility. But there can still be a tendency to still operate in duality at that level, which is to still have some self-gain. There's still some self-gain there. There's still what I get, what I want. I do this because I want something from it.
What do I get from this relationship? What will this person give me? Instead of, what offering can I give? How can I give and share more of my heart and more of who and what I am to evolve this beloved's life, to inspire this beloved in front of me?
Yeah. And when that becomes a selfish a selfless, from selfish to selfless attribute, what happens is that naturally you experience the sattvic pure nature of this mutual bliss connection, where you're both, whether you're in a relationship with always yourself first or others, but there's an inner radiance that you're both in joy, you're both in a mutual benefiting expression of selflessness.
But it's not seen as such. It is not, there is no thought of the mutual benefit that is arising.
You're not doing it for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So we want to presence that first. And really understand the workings of the mind. Because if you don't understand the workings of the mind and the workings of the inner psychology, then you're always going to see duality in the world. And so it's first important to acknowledge that tendency, the way in which the mind plays out.
Let's take a moment to go into the anagram of fear, false evidence appearing real. And let's for a moment recognize that the human condition, its proclivity, is motivated first by fear, before love, believe it or not. Now, one who has worked and one who truly has chosen the purity of heart may still be aware of both fear and love, and will take the time to see whether they're facing fear or facing love. It's opposite in duality. But the human proclivity is to follow fear first. And again, it's false evidence appearing real. And the unconscious mind seeks to be proven correct. It wants to be proven right. So if there's any conditioning from the parental units or any conditioning from the societal implications, the unconscious mind.
Can we make sure everyone's muted, please, beloveds? We're having a little bit of feedback in the audio.
Just pausing when there's feedback.
Yeah, just make sure you're all muted, just so we can have a seamless transmission. Thank you so much.
You know, when I heard that sound coming in, I did check, and actually everyone is muted. It appears that the sound audio, the issue might be on your end, because when one of you is talking, it goes down a little bit. So it is important for everybody to keep themselves muted, and it appeared to be on your end.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
We're going to check something just briefly.
Yeah, we'll bring the microphone maybe a little bit closer.
Yes.
We are able to hear you perfectly. It's just that there's that kind of that sound that comes in addition. So we can just pretend it's the Holy Spirit.
We'll just welcome it. Yes, exactly. Okay, very good.
Okay.
For those of you beloveds who know us, you know that technology always has some strange anomaly around us, so that's fine. In any case, returning back to that, it's the understanding that if that is the main motivation, and if the unconscious mind wants to be proven right, and that's its job essentially, is to prove its conditioning right over and over again and create events and situations that will prove itself right and say, see, I knew that was going to happen. See, I knew, I said it and I knew it and it happened. And this is what we call the tamastic mind, the mind that is always in victimization. It is life that happens to you instead of life happening for you, as you, and through you. And we can talk about that later as well. But most people in relationships what we've found is that the very first aspect of the mind, the tamas, is how the relationship will play out. Now, when two beloveds come together for the first time, there is often perhaps a mask or some veil by which they want to show up as in a certain way, because they want to be their best self and they want that beloved to like them. And perhaps there's something there to look at. What part of you doesn't like yourself enough to be wholly honest and really show up as to who you are? And of course, this is something that happens all the time. And so what happens is that once those masks come down, that's almost like a bait and switch. It's like, wait a minute, I thought that I was in a relationship with this kind of a partner, but really, as time goes on, more and more is revealed. And of course it will be. And so how does one handle that or deal with that? And again, we say you actually go inside of yourself. You go inside to find the part of you that is being served by that information, served by that behavior. And it might be generally something that is still very unhealed within you from something you've witnessed through your parental units or something you saw that made an imprint in your unconscious mind. And this is where the real work takes place in order to be able to get to the next level, which is again, the rajas, the nobility. This is the beginning of how may I serve you today, my love. This is the beginning stages of showing up for someone else without thinking for a moment how they're going to show up for you.
And if you're in a relationship, and this is obviously a beautiful way to relate to yourself. That's what relationship really is. It's a relationship or a vessel or a vehicle in which you get to relate back to yourself. But if you're not in relationship in the romantic kinds, then there's only really one relationship that you're ever in anyway. And that relationship is with God. And that relationship first, again, it's always an inner journey. It's always an inner journey that actually focusing deeper within yourself with how you then relate to yourself, and then how you actually connect into the most sacred nature of yourself, and then how you actually have a relationship with God, with spirits, with the universe at large in its total absolute form or formless nature. And then it comes to the realization where you're actually only in relationship with yourself. You've never ever been in relationship with anyone else other than yourself. There may be two people in relationship, but there's actually only one being in relationship. And in order to transcend the lower nature or the lower mind and rise into the nobility of gratitude and the blessing, and also express the bliss and experience the bliss of life, it can be boiled down to really two choices, the most simple choices in life, which is love or fear. And when you choose that love, and we'll speak into what love is beyond the human conditioning of what love is, but what love truly is, when you choose that, there's a direct path into that sattvic nature, which is actually your true nature. You see, all the obstacles of the victimization or the tamastic tendencies, or the self-ambitious natures or the self-serving models, all of that, these are learned behaviors, these are learned conditions, these are learned programs or impressions. But your true nature is actually sattvic. Who you truly are is the purity of spirit. But the mind can play its games where it shifts perceptions, and the reason why is because before there was mind, there is the causal body, the causal conditioning. So the mind is literally preconditioned and disposed from one's societal conditioning and parental and life conditioning. So that conditioning or programming or impressions within that causal body that are related to this life or every single life that you've ever incarnated at the level of the soul, they're there. But the beautiful thing is that you're not your mind, and you're not even the conditioning of your mind. So why do we keep listening to it? Why do we listen to the story of the mind? Because we forget to choose love. And when we choose love, we're not choosing only the emotional expression or the euphoric beauty of feeling that radiance and connecting it. That's actually a byproduct of what love is when you actually choose love. And what we mean by that is that when you choose love, you're choosing that presence, the very awareness of what arises in your life. Love is the awareness and conscious absolute. So in this moment, if we were to say, are you aware? You would say, yes, I'm aware. I can see a screen, I can see us, and I'm involved in this moment, listening to this satsang. That awareness is love. That awareness is love. Not what arises, not what is thought upon, not the thoughts that arise in that, but the very nature of existence alone, that awareness, which is synonymous with consciousness, that is the love. It is absolute neutrality. And when you choose that first, before you choose the thoughts, the conditioning, the psychology of perception, but you choose that one reality first. Just awareness, just that, yes, I'm aware. And the I, the sense of aliveness that arises within you that says, I am, that I am is the very nature of love itself. Before there's I am that. But when you choose I am love with just knowing that awareness is love, when you choose that first, whatever arises becomes also love. It actually becomes also an extension of that expression. But it takes formidable focus to redirect back to love, redirect back to holy presence, Holy Spirit. And again, these words are being used synonymously with conscious awareness. And that's the work. That's the discernment. That's the quality that you do in every single day. It's not what arises within your life that is love. It's that you are aware of what arises that is love. But sometimes we confuse love with what arises, with an affection. But when you actually choose that and you actually stay in what we call 12 o'clock, which is the presence and awareness of that, what actually arises is your natural bliss. And what arises is sometimes a teaching of what you've been conditioned to be distracted away from that love. And then you love that too. And so your lessons in life is basically until you can choose to love everything unconditionally, until you can actually witness unconditional oneness, that is the nature of love itself in all moments, through all aspects of the mind, through all aspects of life, until you love unconditionally the totality of all of it, you still have more work to do. And that's the very job that every soul has incarnated to serve love, because you are love. And you're here to awaken and realize that to the very depths of your being. So we just want to allow you to take that in, and if there's any questions that arise from that. But it's very simple, but it's not easy. This is the thing, is that we feel that sounds so good, but what when this happens, or what when that happens, or when they do this to me, or when this happens to me, but you haven't experienced maybe what I've experienced, and that's why I feel like this. And trust us, we've experienced all of the nature of suffering, as each one of you all have. We've all experienced that nature of suffering. And suffering for one is not more or less than suffering to another. The suffering is suffering, just as love is love. But suffering is only suffering because it's ignoring the true reality of your nature as love. And the journey is to dispel all that, to illuminate all that. So all the shadows are now just illuminated in the light of love, in the light of consciousness, in the light of the holy, sacred spirit that is existence itself. It is a true experience and existence and reality.
So how does one take all that's been shared and bring it into your everyday life and your everyday experience? Here's the practice. The practice is, before you speak, before you react, before you initiate anything in your life, ask, what is your intention? What is my intention in this moment? Is my intention to be heard and seen because I have some need from childhood where I wasn't heard or seen? Is my intention to be right because I have some need to be proven right?
That's a good one.
Is my intention to bring illumination and love into the heart of the one I love so much, and to resolve a situation because both people are feeling pain? And we can speak about the most idealistic energies in relationship, but we know people are going through their personhood right now. They're going through struggles, great struggles in relationship, great struggles in life, great struggles in looking around the world and going, what is going on right now? And how do I maintain that love that I know so deeply inside I am? And yet sometimes it can be so challenging to do when there's anger and betrayal and all of these feelings that humans go through. And the practice has to be internal. It has to be a practice that you are so brutally honest with yourself, without blame, without shame, and without guilt, but just absolute honesty with yourself. And you don't have to share this with anyone else. This isn't something that you need to go and tell your partner about unless you feel that calling, unless you feel that both will benefit so greatly, but not just because you want to get something off of your chest, so to speak, in that saying, but because there's something truly constructive and truly that is going to raise that relationship even higher into greater presence and greater love and greater inner standing for each other through the process. And for us, this is the practice. The practice is always in doing our utmost to pierce through the words that are being said into what is that beloved really needing right now? Beyond what they even believe that they need, beyond even what they perceive they need in that moment. Because when one is in a trigger or a reaction, one is not in that space of 12 o'clock to know the depths of truth of what is really happening. And so it is the other person's responsibility of love, as love, to show up and say, okay, these are words that are being spoken. What is truly needed right now? How can I serve this beloved right now, beyond what they perceive that they need? And when you do that, there's a magic work that happens. Because that other person that you're in relationship isn't needing to be heard any longer, isn't needing to be proven right any longer, is no longer feeling as though they need to be in defense. There's a softening and a surrender that naturally happens within the physical body itself. And this is when harmony can come about. And this is when resolution can come, and not because you're making someone else wrong or because you're needing to be right, but because your truest and deepest intention is humility in that moment, and that is a practice all in its own right. Does that make sense? Is there anything that anyone would like to further or ask?
And as you take your time to write in questions, there's two main principles in all relationships in the feminine and masculine expression. And that's trust and surrender. You can't have trust without surrender, and you can't surrender without trust. And for the masculine, it's to surrender to the feminine. And that's an inward job first, of course. It's always inwardly surrendering to your inner feminine if you are in a masculine body. Or
if you're holding masculine energy as your dominant.
Yeah, if you express more in a masculine manner, then there's that surrender into that feminine presence, that feminine nature as well. And then in relationship, it's the surrendering. It's putting the other first. It's always putting the feminine first, really. That's because the feminine is first. And to be truthfully honest, the feminine is first. The feminine is the womb of all creation, for creation to arise, for all existence to appear and transform before our very eyes. And so it's honoring that sacred feminine always first, surrendering to that. And how can I serve that? And that selfless nature of how do I actually show up and serve that? And if you're not in relationship, then it's first, okay, how do I surrender to that truth, that presence of love, that awareness within myself first, before I react or respond in a way that is self-serving? How do I, and it's not what you do, it's how you do it, it's the intention in which you do it, which we shared before. Is this serving my soul? Is this serving spirit? Is this in service? Or is this based on a fear of ignorance that I'm not looking at the picture with full clarity? And for the feminine, it's the trust. It's trusting the masculine. It's trusting yourself, that masculine aspect within yourself that knows within. And in relationship, it's trusting that there is that support. There will be that container of support. And this sometimes brings up the
upholding.
Yeah, and upholding the other and respecting that in that trusting manner. And the beautiful thing with this is that this can be, this is very, at the very depth of the primal psychology of, again, the desire and aversion. Because if we look at that model, the Thomastic model, what transcends that is when you realize that there's those two activities, those actions, one's inner and one's external, and which is trust and surrender. And they're both actually inner and external, actually, in their ways. But that's really important when you're in that relationship, that ship to relate to self.
And let's stress that for a moment, because it's so easy to look at another body and imagine that you are in fact in relationship with another body.
And to add that, you never actually ever touch anyone. You never actually touch anything. It's amazing, but actually the nervous system that thinks it's touching others and feels others, and you never actually touch another object in your entire life. When you look at the microscopic level, there's an invisible field that does not actually touch any object. You never have touched another object ever in your life, or another person in your life ever. It's amazing, but actually that's the truth. So when you think you're touching and in relationship and connecting, and that is beautiful, it is. It's a sacred experience, but you're not. You're actually not touching them. You're actually feeling yourself. You're only feeling your nervous system. You're actually only feeling the impulses, the biochemistries within yourself. You're literally only in relationship with yourself.
The entire world that is completely transactional is all you.
Yeah.
And so how wonderful and empowering that can be, to know that.
And it can bring up loneliness. It can bring up loneliness to feel like, oh my
yes.
goodness, I'm only by myself. There's only me. What does that mean? Am I going to be stuck with my mind forever?
That's where the work comes in.
That's where you transcend loneliness to aloneness.
Into all one.
Exactly.
Yes.
All oneness, aloneness.
Aloneness is all oneness. And when one can abide in that, then everything else falls away.
Yeah.
Truly.
It does. And to the unenlightened mind, one sees reality in division and sometimes confusion and an illusion that what reality appears to be. But when you see things clearly, you see it all as unconditional oneness. There's this unconditional oneness of the divine play. And that's really what you're witnessing when you experience life. It's an unconditional oneness of this divine play of the universal expression of life through its macrocosm, its microcosm, and its metacosm, in all expressions of that. And so when you get comfortable in your uncomfortable conditioning and you sit in that and you stay with that, it melts away. And that is a continued practice. And we're just giving you opportunities to acknowledge what you already know. We can't tell you anything that you don't already know. You're just remembering, oh yeah, that makes sense. Oh, that resonates. Truth cannot be taught. It just can be remembered.
Pointed to.
Yeah, truth can just be pointed to. And you remember it because it's you. It's you. And when you are acknowledging that awareness is your nature, awareness, consciousness, bliss, Sat Chit Ananda, when you're aware of that, which is the threefold nature of divinity in its totality, then you're awake. It's simple. You're awake. You see things clearly. That's all enlightenment means. Enlightenment's a very exotic term.
And often used.
An exotic term it's sometimes confused, but it's really simple. It's really simple. It's also really beautiful because it also illuminates your cells. It also has a byproduct of many beautiful ascension qualities that lift this vessel in its divinity and awaken some powerful dormant genetics and all of that. But in its simplicity, it's actually as simple as seeing things clearly. Just as when it's dawn and the sun's rising and before the sun actually starts its ascension, it's dark. You don't see things clearly. You don't see the horizon as clearly. You don't see nature as clearly. But when that sun comes up and it's not a cloudy day, it's not winter and it's raining, generally you see things clearly. You see your environment very clearly. And that's really what the journey is just understanding your true nature and not settling for anything less than love. Not making a choice less than love, staying true to love, staying true to your true nature.
And, I always tend to bring things back to conditioning quite a lot. And why is that? Because there are many beloveds in the world that don't believe that they are worthy of love. And we know this. And there are many beloveds who have never experienced love, and we know this. And so how do you know when you are experiencing love? True love. Unconditional love. And we can't equate that to human love, because human love is transactional. It is expectant.
Conditional.
It is conditional. And so we want to speak of what transcends that. And going back to enlightenment, you know, so many people right now are saying that they're awake. Okay. But what their perception of awake is, that they're awakening to the truth of the treachery of the earth, the truth of humankind, like all of that. That's what awakening is looking like. That's not awake. Awake is a transcendence well beyond the illusion. It is the transcendence well beyond the getting stuck or the being bound by what is perceptual here on this earth plane. Awake is recognizing that all is in its perfection, truly deepening that.
And let's speak into what that is. Okay. If all of this in the perceivable world is just energy, and everything that looks like different objects is just different wave oscillation rates that create the illusion of form, if it's just all energy, and if we take that further, actually it's just all light, it's just actually just all photons of light, then how can one expression of light be better than the other when it's just all light? When it's just all, how can one drop of water be better than another drop of water when it's all a part of one ocean of water? And that's where you see things clearly. Yes, of course, there's a propensity to have more of attraction to certain desirable experiences, and there's a propensity to have aversion to, you know, the not so desirable experiences.
That's part of limbic brain.
That's part of the temastic quality of, yeah, desire and aversion, good, bad, right, wrong. But when we strip all that back, we strip it back to naked consciousness, just pure consciousness, pure awareness. Light is light. Water is water. Life is life. And there's no judgments that's overlaying on that, because the judgments are the very conditionings that are then projected onto what I choose and what I like. But what happens when you actually see things as they are, there's this beautiful flow and effortless quality that happens in life, and everything actually turns out perfect. Not because you're trying for perfection or you're striving for perfection. Actually, you just let go of control. And when
you can see the blessing.
Yeah, when you let go of control and allow the universe to do its thing, you start merging with that. It's a beautiful phenomenon. And this is the phenomenology of this plane, of this realm. When you let go of control, the greater part of you that
Control
actually
lets go of you.
Yeah, exactly. But the greater part of you, the greater truth of you that actually rises the sun every morning and sets the sun every evening, that spins the galaxies around, that aspect of you becomes alivened. Mm-hmm. And you are awake to that true reality that allows change to happen in its consistency. But you are unchangeable. You are the unchanging presence that allows and witnesses all of this in its unfoldment. And the good news is, we speak about human conditioning and we speak about human love, how it's limiting in the truest sense. The good news is you're not even human. The good news is that you actually are not even human. You're actually
just focused on that right now.
Yeah, you're actually not human. You may have a human body. You may be having a human experience. You may be in the human game right this moment. But you're actually not human. Okay, then what am I? Well, we've been saying it all along. You're love. Your love is conscious awareness, as Sat Chit Ananda, truth, conscious bliss, truth awareness bliss, that you are that truly. And the role in your journey is not to try to seek that out, it's just to remove all the obstacles that are in the way of what you already are. And that's the journey of relationship as well, is to remove all the obstacles around your heart, all the obstacles in your life that prevent you from loving the other unconditionally and loving yourself unconditionally.
And giving of that other completely in your wholeness.
Yeah.
Not holding anything back because you're afraid.
Yeah.
But just give it all. Those who give all,
they get all.
Get all.
When you give all, you receive all. And when you're in a relationship where it's not, what can I get from life? What can I get from the other? But what can I give to life? You're not here to get anything. You're here to give everything. You're here to be of service. And the beautiful thing is when you are in devotion in relationship, you're devoted to your partner, or you're devoted to God, and you're devoted to God as your partner in life. It purifies your heart. And when you show up in selflessness and you serve the other, and you serve, and you're in this consistent selfless service to the world, to the assistance of the awakening of the collective, or any way in which that shows up, but there's a selfless attribute there with your intention in authentic genuinity. When you serve from that, it purifies your mind. So those very actions of devotion and selfless service, they purify the heart and purify the mind of any selfish tendencies and actually fill you with bliss. It's so simple. And it's not because you need to be filled up with bliss. What happens is you get emptied out of all the things that are in conflict.
So only bliss remains. And
only bliss remains, because bliss is when there's no conflict. There's no rub. There's no rubbing against another. There's just this flow, and so it's removing those obstacles that create division in the mind. So you can see another clearly. You can see life clearly, and you can see yourself. Mm-hmm. So the true nature of yourself and the true nature of the universe is the same.
And if you are, in fact, living as we speak, the true nature of the universe is revealed in relationship.
Yeah. And that person or that being, the one being, disguised as a person that you're in service to, or people that you're in service to, that persona, the mask drops and the truth remains, and you're in service to all of it. When you're truly in selfless service, whether it's to one or to many, you're in self to the entire universe. And that's something that we are great advocates of, that selfless service. And how can I serve you, my love? How can I serve you today? How can I serve? How can I serve in anything that's arising within your life? How can I be of service from the most pure space? And sometimes you don't feel like that. Sometimes you feel like, no, what I want to get something. But just see that for what that is. That's a rajasic tendency. Just see that that's the mind's nature of a rajasic.
Or even tamasic, depending on where it's coming from in the unconscious and what its rationale is for wanting that. And
then so even maybe you feel like, no, I'm angry today. No, I'm angry today.
And I want to be angry because it feels like I want to be angry today, and I don't want to be happy today.
That very expression.
That doesn't even feel good in my body to say that.
And exactly, you become hypersensitive when you say certain words. When you say certain words, you become ultra sensitive, and you're like, you just can't even speak words like that. You can't even do it. But where I was going with this is that when you say such words that you think is true, by actually saying that, it's actually the opposite. And why is that so? The fact of you saying that you're angry, or you're saying that you're this, is actually the opposite, is because what you're saying is thoughts being expressed or emotions being expressed, but you're the awareness that is expressing it. And so you can't be those emotions of expression. You can't be those thoughts, because they're temporary. What you are is the witness and the awareness of that, which is eternal, which is unchanging. And so when you say something like that, you're actually saying, the very notion of that is actually laughable, because you're actually not. You may feel angry or upset.
Or an aspect of you
Yeah, or an aspect of your conditioning or an aspect of your personality may feel this or think this.
Because you don't want to own that as the entirety of your anything, really.
You go back to actually, no, what arises, I am not. What I am is the awareness of what arises. And then what happens is whatever arises, when you realize with your true nature, that love, that awareness of love, whatever arises is loved unconditionally. So it doesn't matter what arises, because love actually penetrates it, and the true reality of whatever arises becomes a reflection back to your true nature. And this is a practice until you reconfigure. It's the journey to God by being absorbed into that, and then it's the journey through God. And if we break that down even further, the first level that Shekinah spoke of at the beginning was just very briefly, was that life happens to me. Life happens to me. I'm a victim. This happens to me. This has happened to me. That's the first level of the shadow tendencies. Then that evolves to life happens for me. Life happens for me. This happens for me to realize more about myself, or see myself more, to be grateful, and to it happens for me. Life happens for me.
Right. So, for example, you see a license plate and it says something, and you go, "Oh, that was for me." Or you see a sign, there's a butterfly that just flew up. That was for me.
Yeah. Or you look at your phone, you see the numerics 111. Oh, yes, that was for me.
They're talking to me.
Yeah.
that's life happens for me.
And then it evolves into something beautiful where life happens through me. That's the sattvic nature, where life happens through me. There's an effortless grace and flow to life. There's no rub, there's no friction. Life's happening through you. It's like a dance. You're like, and the beauty of dance is that when you're dancing, you're not thinking how to get to the other side of the room. You're not thinking where you're going to land. You just dance. You're just in it. You're just an expression of the vibration of music being expressed, and you land wherever you land, and where you land is perfect.
And you are carried there by creation itself.
Yeah. And that life happens through me, is that when you have those days, and each one of you have had those days where everything's just flowing. You get every green light. You get these unexpected blessings or prosperity that comes in, or something happens, and everything's flowing. It's like, oh, this is beautiful. That can happen every day. That can truly happen every day. It doesn't have to be one-offs. But that's what we're talking about, the flow. When there's no friction in life. That is the true nature of Ananda, of bliss, meaning of the true meaning of that word. And then there's a fourth state.
This is where we live our life.
And this is where life happens as me. There's no duality. There's just perfect beingness. And life happens through me, and life happens as me. It's just a maturation. That's all it is. It's just maturing into that flow, into that true awareness, allowing that to be to the thoughts that arise, and then allow that to define your reality, which is just a projection of your own psychology onto reality. Life just is. It just is. The sun
not
just
good, or bad.
Yeah, the sun just shines. It just shines. It doesn't say I'm shining over here or less than over there. It just shines. It just shines. That's its true nature. And
it doesn't need you to watch it shine in order to shine.
And that's your true nature. What is divine? What is divinity? It means to shine, to be your own sun. And then that maturation process of being in that flow comes to that moment where the mind itself, the body, organism, the causal conditioning, it all becomes absorbed into the one true reality. The light of 100,000 suns pales to the light of consciousness. Pales in comparison to the light of consciousness. And when you're absorbed into that light of true Holy Spirit, the true light of Christ, the true light of the Dharmic will, of Buddha mind, Buddha consciousness, whatever words we use to ascribe that, whatever religious significance that we've been brought to that have a familiarity
Or cultural significance,
yeah,
not religious.
whatever that is, the true nature of you as that luminosity, as that divinity, it shines through you as you. And then all life, it's like high noon. The sun's shining like high noon every day, and the light of consciousness is blazing, blazing, blazing. And all the difference between an enlightened mind and an unenlightened mind is an enlightened mind doesn't have conditioning. It's allowed the conditioning to dissolve into truth absolute. And then there's a stabilization with that process where some conditioning may arise, but then those too get transcended. And as you stay absorbed enough, the only difference between a human and a saint we always say a saint is a sinner that never gave up. And that original sin is the construct of the ego.
Which we don't believe in.
There is no sin. It's just the false identification with the separate self. That's the original sin, which is a sine wave.
The sine wave.
It's a sine wave of duality. The sin or the sine wave is just a sine wave of duality, of the pulse of life, of perceiving duality. That's the original sin. It's not like you have to.
And that was the fall of consciousness, essentially.
That was perceived as the fall of consciousness.
That's what it's known as.
Yeah, but that's all that is just a perception of a conditioning that isn't even you. It's just a story that fades away. And when you see life in the unconditional oneness that it is truly, then life is lived. Love, light, and life become the same thing every day in every way.
I'm coming in for a moment just because I feel like this first beautiful hour, you've given the big picture. You know, you've given us the big picture of really the overview. And I encourage everybody to listen to this first hours. Of course, this is being recorded for everybody and will be sent, because you get the beautiful big picture of the meaning of life and relationship and where we're going. And for those of us that still are in, my drop is bigger than your drop. my drop in the ocean is bigger than yours, but the sun's shining more on your hill than on my hill. For those of us that are still in that duality, there are actually some really wonderful questions that are coming in, and they're actually wonderful, wonderful questions. So would like to get to those if that's all right. Yeah,
absolutely. We're here for you.
We're here in service to each one of you. So
this is why we're here.
We're here. We can just flow in any way that's needed.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I think Deborah has asked the first question, which came in from Norm. Go ahead, Deborah.
Yeah, thank you so much, both of you. Just love you so much.
I love you too.
Yeah. So one of the questions that came in earlier is about navigating the relationship with emotions and mind, and I want to add soul, because the emotions are a really strong, juicy part of the dynamics, but sometimes they can attach to the core wounds and exaggerate some of that wounding and negativity that may come up and sort of take over. And maybe they'll go off in another direction, and there'll be hurtful things that will be expressed and shared in that dynamic of relationship. So the question is how do you navigate with the emotional body in relationship? Because relationship is a lot of that. It's there to bring those things up so you can heal, so you can evolve, so you can see yourself in the mirror. And how you get to really coming to the place where you can negotiate and connect through mind. And when you do have those hurtful situations, how do you get back together and get back to the harmony and the higher levels of connecting at the soul level that you demonstrate so beautifully? So
beautiful question.
Okay, so what comes to heart in this moment? Thank you, beloved Deborah, and thank you, Norm, for asking. If there is a trigger, which we call the treasures, there's a treasure trove waiting to be discovered. There are jewels and many beautiful things that are available for you and waiting for you.
And just to really emphasize that first, triggers are treasures, all right? So when the emotion comes up that feels like a trigger, shift that perception into what treasure is being discovered, like that first point. Let's just drop into that, because that changes everything. That literally changes absolutely everything.
So exactly. So just, recognizing that there's nothing to be fearful of in a trigger. It's just an opportunity. It's a wonderful opportunity for you to go deeper and then go higher. The deeper you go down, the higher you go up and the more you can expand. And so returning back to that question specifically, what we find is that when a treasure comes up for reveal, it is because the two people in relationship are playing a game that they learned from childhood. It's a childhood game. So what we find is that when these things come up, that normally we have an 8-year-old and a 14-year-old in a relationship together. And what does that mean? It means that let's role play for a moment. Let's say that if there was to be a treasure that arises, okay, here's the practice. This is what we would do, okay? The practice is this. Okay, I'm not responding in a rational way right now. Okay, this is feeling irrational. there's an escalation here that doesn't feel necessary. So, okay. Is there an event or a moment in my life that I can remember, or an age that shows up that is in fact being revealed at this moment? Okay, 14 years old. Oh, that was a rough year. 14 years old. I mean, goodness, that was high school or right before high school, right? And that's a challenging time. And so many conditions in relationship are created at that time. And then if you're in a conscious partnership, then you turn to your partner and say, darling, is there also something that you feel might be irrational at this moment? And if so, when was the first time, or do you have a moment, a vision or an experience that you can share at this moment from an early time that might be interplaying right now with my 14 and your 16-year-old, for example?
And what this is doing is called breaking the state. You're breaking the state of reactivity, of this emotional impulse. I'm going to react. So when you perceive treasure instead of trigger, okay, something's coming up that I need to resolve and heal in order to become whole in that expression. This asks for true intimacy, true authenticity, through transparency. You break the state by, now, if that doesn't happen, okay, because you're just caught up in it and you're in this whirlwind and you can't analyze when you felt it or when it happens, you need to make an agreement with your partner when you're in a beautiful state together, and you make agreement that you take full responsibility for your own feelings. That's the first, you have to take that step first, because this is great when you get to that level of being able to help each other, use each other as a mirror to go deeper within each other, to excavate that treasure. But before we can get there, if you are in a reactivity, before you're in those moments of a relationship, you first have to make a commitment that you will take responsibility for your own feelings. You have to take full responsibility first. And then when there is an expression, you can be authentic. Right now, I'm feeling XYZ. Just right, and it has nothing to do with you. You need to add that piece to it. I feel like this, and it has nothing to do with you, because then you move away from the blame game of I blame you, I shame you, but you did this and I did that, but I'm always like this and you never do this. That whole story that can go out the window when you take responsibility for your feeling, because you are the only one responsible for your own happiness. And when you are looking for someone else to bring you happiness, to make you happy, something else, you've just gone into a bind. You've literally bound yourself to the very conditioning of these attachments to the expectations of certain outcomes. So you first must make that in a conscious relationship. There needs to be, I take full responsibility for my feelings, and they have nothing to do with you. That is the premise. Then this is the fun part. This is the play where, okay, I see that my 12-year-old is actually in relationship, in communication right now. The child's got the
steering
driving
wheel.
The car. So maybe if you're in the masculine form, then take a pause, because if you try to express those emotions, there's a chemical imbalance that's going to happen. Your estrogen levels are going to rise. The more that you talk, the more you're going to perpetuate this estrogen level, which then you're going to feel like you've lost control, you've lost power, and all these ego games will play out. So take a moment, take a breath,
take a walk,
and come back when you're in a more neutral space, and then come say, apologize, always, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you,
anything that is not truly coming from the depth of my heart.
Really being authentic and sincere first, and taking personal responsibility first for your feelings. And then I can see how I was feeling. And when you get good at this, you can track it really well. You can go, I can see how it was my 14-year-old that was coming up. But be careful not to identify with that 14-year-old as in like, I'm this now. It's like I can see, I see this aspect that's coming up that and that needs me to work through that.
A little bit more tender love and care.
Yeah, and
just a little bit more love.
And when you do love that, and when you see and you drop into that inner child or that moment in time, that aspect does melt into love. The barriers between that aspect and this aspect, and that moment and this moment, start dissolving. And the other key to this is don't take things personally. And that's hard when you're in a relationship, when you're in an intimate relationship or a marriage, and it's like, but they said this to me. But you have to remind yourself not to take things personally. That's a key point. First, taking full responsibility for your own feelings, for your own happiness. Second is don't take things personally. Now, that doesn't mean it gives them the green light to offload on you and to just if there is some sort of toxicity in that experience, you just have to put a pause on it.
Well, you have to go inside of yourself and find, where do you also exhibit that toxicity, even if it's just in your own thoughts towards yourself. Yeah,
but take a pause in order to give yourself the space to do that. Because you're more powerful than your conditioning. You're more powerful than your emotional experience. You're more powerful than the very biochemistries that are doing this. And then what happens is that those neuronic pathways, the nervous system gets recalibrated. When you override those lower mind tendencies, when you override them, it gets easier and easier and effortless and more effortless, because you're literally reprogramming the program script
entire journey
of your mind, of the axon neuronic pathways in the brain. The neuroplasticity changes, your cell response changes, your brainwave pattern changes, your nervous system, your endocrine system, it all changes when you take yourself out of that and that stressful experience and pause for a moment, and then you repattern And so that's what you have to do first, is this. That's why we stopped and said, triggers are treasures. When it comes up, instead of like, oh, I don't want to feel this. This is your fault. Treasures coming up right now. All right, I take full responsibility. I feel this, and it has nothing to do with you. And I just need to take a moment.
Yeah.
And then you go into that self, that go into that self-excavation, to excavate that treasure. And then you go, wow, I see the blessing. Then you're grateful for the blessing, and it elevates you from, because the trigger's at the shadow level. The treasure is then at the actual, the majestic, which is the gift, the gift that you find from this, the blessing. And then it elevates you to the sattvic, to the pure level, where you see the jewel and you can see the beautiful clarity of the jewel. You can see the clarity of the reality, the experience itself, and why it's coming up for you. I hope that helps, that question, beloved Norman, if that's any use to you or anyone else.
I just want to acknowledge how beautiful that is. And I want to tie two pieces of what you've shared together. You talked about how relationship and even life itself helps us to learn what's in the way between me and being in a state of love all the time. And that's where the treasures, seeing these triggers as treasures, comes in, because of course, when we get re-stimulated, our inner 14-year-old gets re-stimulated, because when we were 14, we were abandoned by our first boyfriend or whatever it is, and that's getting re-stimulated. So those triggers are what are helping us now in present time to learn, oh, I still have a wound. I still have what I call a veil of past pain that gets re-stimulated when I hear that word or when I have this experience. And by re-experiencing it and bringing consciousness to it, then we can remove the veil of past pain and be more in that state of presence and love that you're living in. So I just love what you're sharing. It's beautiful. There are so many other wonderful questions. So I'm going to try and for a few different questions that came in, I'm going to combine them into one. A lot of the people who are here, of course, are very, very sensitive. One in particular, I see her as an earth angel. And so there's questions coming in about how to manage when I'm very sensitive, and I want to connect with my family members, or I want to connect with others, and I love them, but my sensitivity gets in the way, or I get thrown off by, this is Scott's word, by their density, or by their vibration, or by their choices. So how to manage staying in the integrity of the sensitive being, wanting to connect and merge or be loving, but also setting clear boundaries. Anything you have to share on kind of those challenges that come up, which I think are relevant for so many people here.
Yeah, it's a beautiful question.
What we know is that the family of origin is one of your largest masteries. It is one of the greatest tests and one of the greatest reasons why you chose to incarnate into that family of origin. You chose. No one chose for you. So why are those opportunities presented for you? Not for you to run from them because you're sensitive, but for you to, in fact, start to transcend that sensitivity into such a deep level of compassion, that compassion reigns supreme over absolutely every aspect that could create disruption for you. That in fact, those who are so sensitive and can easily be wobbled, essentially, this is your mastery. And it is not about running from it, but it is in fact moving directly into it and transcending, this would be the work for you, is transcending that sensitivity into such a level of compassion that nothing can move you, that nothing can sway you, not your mother, not your father, not your siblings, and not your partner.
Yeah, and this doesn't mean you have to like everyone. You don't have to like everyone. Compassion does not mean that you like everyone's choices and actions, but it does mean you love everyone. And so you may not like the behavior of other ones that are close and near and dear to you, whether they're family, friends, or others. You may not like those actions. They may be very much based in ignorance and fear. But respecting one's choices and one's others' decisions, there's just a respect there. There's a mutual respect. And that creates a boundary. First and foremost, you create that boundary. Now, it doesn't mean you have to agree with it. Doesn't mean you give consent or around those actions, but you love the truth of them. And when you love the truth of them, the true nature of them, when you love that and you see that, you also get to see it inside yourself. And it just, a beautiful uprising of compassion is just there. It's not because you're trying to be compassionate. Oh yeah, you're just not far enough, and I get it because you're still asleep and I'm awake. No, it's not like that. It's compassion is that you really understand that what they're going through. Now, if they're taking that out on you and they're trying to say no, you just have to become very comfortable with setting boundaries. And sometimes with beautiful, sensitive beloveds, that sometimes it's hard to want to set boundaries because you're very sensitive to the feelings of others. But it's just a mutual respect. It's just like, I respect your differences and I ask for you to respect mine. And that's okay. But you have to investigate if there is a trigger inside you that's coming up. You have to investigate your emotional attachments. And the emotional attachment can also look like, well, I want them to see things like I see things. I want them to also love everyone. And I want them to also be spiritual. And I want them to also have this freedom. That's still an emotional attachment. And in order to understand your emotional attachments, you have to acknowledge what emotional attachments are. They are bindings. Because emotional attachment creates an expectation that then creates a reactive nature of another binding or a limitation. And when you investigate these emotional attachments and you love it for their differences, you love them, you don't agree with it, it's not what you would do, it's not how you would be, but there's a mutual respect, honor the differences, but you let go of any expectations that you want for them or for you. And the easiest way to do that, the simplest way, it's sometimes never as easy, like we said earlier, but the simplest way is discernment, discerning truth. Really discerning truth, discerning the real from the unreal. That gets you in the door. When you can discern that, because the reason for that discernment is what is always changing: emotions, thoughts, the body, reality. It's always changing. It's all in this transience. It's always shifting. It's always changing. If you want something a specific way, and you desire it a specific way, and you have emotional attachment to this specific way, and it's shifting, then of course on the other side of that shift is going to be suffering. And so when you discern between what's unchanging and what is changing, what is the world in its worldliness, emotions and thoughts and relationship, and that connection, that's all transactional. That's in a transactional empirical world or universe. But there's something that transcends that, which is the truth that we're speaking about, the love that we're talking about, and that's unchanging, the divine presence, the divine conscious awareness. And that's first. And that has an unconditional nature to it. It's accepting to what they are. Everyone is perfectly where they need to be on their spiritual journey. Perfectly.
Now, Yes. Please continue.
And we have some other questions if you're open.
There's absolutely, there just is.
Does
there's
that make sense though?
two pieces left to that.
Sure.
No.
Okay. And going back to the mastery piece for those truly sensitive ones. And let's give an example. So let's say you haven't been with your family of origin for a long time. I'm just going to use family of origin because it seems like it's a very important piece in one's journey into self-discovery. And you go home and you're experiencing that there's a lot of judgment. Oh, wow, my goodness, they're so judgmental. I really wish they weren't so judgmental. Are you affected by it? If you are still affected by it to the point where you can't be around it because it upsets you so much, then to us, that signifies that there are still some parts of you that hold that judgment, not necessarily around the same things, although it might still be there as well, in the smallest little shards that might be still left there.
Or big boulders.
Or big boulders that you still can't see. But if you are affected, then there is more investigation. Then we say, investigate why.
Mm-hmm.
And that investigation is what's going to lead to great healing. So that, because if what you are experiencing in your witness and awareness is still showing up this way for you, then the role is still being played. And if in fact that role is still being played for you, then there is a reason why that's still showing up in your awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And so hopefully that also is another piece to add to it that returns you right back to yourself again.
Yeah, it's investigating where's the rub. Really, where's the rub? And if you investigate that, who you are is never affected. You just misidentified yourself again with the mind or with your emotions or with the body or with the apparent self, not with the real self. You just misidentified yourself in that moment because love is not affected. Love doesn't change. Love can never be upset. Love is love. Awareness is awareness. So if you're misidentifying yourself with those conditions, with those feelings, then you can go into them because there's still work to be done in order to purify that. So where's the rub? That's just the question to ask.
Thank you, beloveds. Beloved Deborah, please ask the next question.
You're muted, beloved.
Thank you. Thank you so much. One thing I'd like to ask is what's possible in relationship today? Because you both represent a very exalted state of relationship, and you might define what TwinRay is, because I think, some of the people on this session may not know that. And then there's twin flames, and I've heard you say that, and I've heard from other teachers too, that there's more possibility of twin flames connecting in this life because it's such an expanded time on the planet. And so just, with putting this all into place and doing our work, where are we headed in terms of potential relationship with beloveds?
Beautiful question.
Well, that's, to return back to the TwinRay for a moment, that's one of the purposes of the incarnation of the TwinRay is to bring about and ignite, not even necessarily in direct connection, but just being here, 144 million divine union potentials on the planet. And that would have never been able to happen without the embodiment of the TwinRay.
So let's bring this back to everyone's journey on that ascension journey as well, in relationships as well. before we do that at a personal level, we can look at the soul, how there's soul mates. There's people in your life where there's a familiarity where you remember that that at the soul level, may not remember the exact lifetime, or you may, but you remember there's a familiarity with their signature, their energy nature. And that could be in your family, it could be your parents, it could be your siblings, it could be anyone, truly. That doesn't need to be in a romantic relationship, or it might be in a romantic relationship as well. And again, we're giving some labels here, but the one thing in common between all of these, the one thing that's in common with all of it is love, true love. No matter how love shows up,
and service.
there's the fact that
to each other.
It's the love first, and that's what's remembered. And you remember yourself through these. So there's certain karmas, there's certain lessons, there's certain things that haven't been completed in other lifetimes, or experiences that are needing to become a part of this incarnation. And that's really what soulmates is about, is the mates of the soul that come back, the family of the soul family. And then there's flame mates. And flame mates is that, you share a flame. There's moments in time where you've had that love, you've had that connection. But it may have been more of a lower desires. It may have not been of a higher spiritual journey or virtue. Or it may be very virtuous, very pure, very, but you share a flame. You've shared connection together in whatever that way is. You've shared your energy with each other in an intimate way, and that may be remembered from other incarnations. And generally, there's a familiarity there, and you connect. Your chakras or your energy centers, they connect with each other. You're at a similar level where you can connect.
And usually this is short-lived.
Yeah. It brings up,
sort of ignites and then fizzles out, like one flame would.
Yeah. So there's certain expressions of how that shows up, but there's sort of a propensity of seeking to keep that flame alit, basically. But then when there comes a twin flame first happens within yourself. It's not actually in a relationship with another perceptually. It's actually the relationship, again, like we've said the whole time, it's actually within yourself. And that's when you're connecting first with the true beloved, the only beloved, God, the divine, within yourself, and your spiritual heart and your physical heart, they start coming into contact. They start coming into connection. The two flames, the two sparks of light start connecting within. And that's metaphysical, but it also is literal as well, in the sense that you feel this inner connection with your true self. And there's an integrity there of that authentic, pure nature where you're connecting with as well. Then when it comes to twin flames, when you connect with someone else in a physical, they've also had that connection within themselves. There's also the intimacy that they've had with themselves. And then there's 7 different permutations of what a twin flame can look like.
It could be 8 as well, depending. But yes.
But the 7 that we teach and talk about is basically where you're connected through the energy system. Where you connecting your energy? And when there's that twin flame partner where you're actually in that service together, it's when all your energetic centers are actually connected together, and then you start migrating into one field, one energetic field. And so that's the journey of a twin flame, where there's this service mission. There's this deep desire to be of service to the world.
Activism.
There's a conscious sacred activism that generally shows up. It's like there's work to be done, and there's that reinforcement of also working together to unmask any of the karmas, the samskaras, which are the impressions and the conditioning within the causal body, and you utilize the relationship vehicle as an ascension vehicle to ascend in your awareness and also purify through working together and being of service to the world. There's always a deep desire to be of service, and then that shows up.
And that is the reason why twin flames come together to begin with.
Yeah. And you are our
It's for that
accelerators.
service.
Yeah, you're accelerators for each other. So you accelerate, but that also can accelerate the opposite direction as well. It doesn't mean like everything's rainbows and unicorns and magic. It can absolutely be, and generally it is from the very beginning, but then there's a shadow ways where you have to go in and there's some stuff that arises for you to really look at.
Well, this is where you really begin to annihilate the ego. If you are in a truly twin flame relationship, this is where the ego fears annihilation in the face of love. And this is where there is the desire for some to pull away and run in the other direction, because they are literally facing themselves in such a clear way that they've never done before.
Yeah. And what happens is that you assist your own ascension together, and that's internally and that's together, and you do that always on behalf of the collective. That's what the twin flame is really for. It's
activism,
to work together in such an intimate way where you can purify each other, but by the work that you do is the work that's also being done for the entire collective as well. So it's a noble, beautiful relationship, and it does. And
it is that symbiotic relationship where, for a twin flame, when they're working on the earth or they're helping others, they are in fact healing themselves in the process.
Yeah. Indeed.
So it's that symbiotic relationship.
And you can see how flames come in and out. They come in and they're one part of the one spirit or one soul monads, but they sort of come in and they do this dance together. And there is an esoteric science behind this as well, which we won't go too far into at the soul level. So before you incarnate, the qualities of what actually attracts soulmates and flame mates and twin flames and all of those aspects as well. But that's another topic altogether. And with TwinRay, it's not that a twin flame and a twin ray, one is higher, one is better, one is more, one is less. It's not about that. And it's not about that for any of these relationships. These are just categories of understanding the resonance points and how they played out, the karmic contracts that brought them together. But what's most important is it's relationships are to uncover that perfect love, that divine love within each other. That's really what every relationship's about. And then when there's romantic relationships, it's to uncover that so you become one in love with each other. And with a twin ray, of how we understand it and how we share about the twin ray, is that both have already gone through their solo journey. They've already gone through their own journey of awakening, self-realization and liberation. Already gone through that. And ascension. And that they've completed that ascension journey through the initiations of ascension. And generally, twin rays are off planet. They're actually not even on the planets. In the ascended collective, generally twin rays don't actually incarnate and come onto planet. There's certain time cycles when that happens. But what happens is that there has to be there's a liberation there's already the beloved has been realized as God within, throughout. Life happens as me, that's the reality. And then there's a connection. And this is also known as the hierogamic union. It was known as in antiquity as the hierogamy, where it's the god and goddess sacred marriage, the marriage of that sacred. But they've already realized God. They've already gone through God realization in their own individual path. And then they've come together, and they come together for one purpose, and it's to assist the new cycle, the new cycle of Earth.
Right. The twin ray is not activists.
That we're not.
We do not go around and No, nothing
Yeah,
like that.
it's more of an overlining presence,
We're overlighting.
and it's a support to help express true love and be embodiments of that love, and also make that alive and assist the aliveness and the realization of that for others. And so there still is a world service, there still is, but it's not an activism like that. It's seeing things as perfect as they are, and helping assist in the ascension of the collective.
And not needing anything from the other.
Yeah,
because
it's fully self-sustained.
we're fully self-sustained.
And so with every other relationship, there's a dynamic where there's sometimes codependency. There's a codependent behavioral response. Then there's independency, where it's like, oh, I'm going to be my separate self and, but then there's interdependency, where there's this interconnectivity where there's maybe two vessels, but there's just one consciousness. And there's actually only one consciousness. But the two vessels realize that and are absorbed into the liberation of that. And we also like to extend what TwinRay means for the path as well, because it's not just, TwinRay is not just representing us in our relationship, in our marriage, or in our service. It's also
one level.
That's one level of it. But TwinRay also represents non-duality. Where can you distinguish two different beams of light? You can distinguish two different flames, but when there's two beams of light, it's one. So it seems like there might be two, but there's actually only one. And so there's a non-dual component with TwinRay and the message of what TwinRay is sharing. And also, in its essence, it just means Holy Communion. It means divine union. It means that union of the divine masculine feminine, the Christos Sophia, or the hierogamy of the divine merged as one. And so in different religions, they have different wordings for this, but it's not a word that we made up, so to speak. It's a word that actually is signifying the divine masculine feminine as one. And that is also experienced in a twin flame relationship, that union, but they do it together. TwinRay has already done that path, and they've come together through this service to this world and this time cycle, twin flame. So that's why when we share about TwinRay, sometimes beloveds are like, well, I want my TwinRay, I want a twin. It's like, it's not about that. It's not about even having a twin flame or even a flame mate it's recognizing love. And when you become an embodiment of that love by dissolving any conflicts and the mind's programming and all that, and dissolve into that, and you become an embodiment of that truth and you express that truth, what becomes your living reality is love in its full expression, in its unconditional oneness. And every relationship serves and supports that one thing. So it's not one's higher, one's better, one's lower. It's get rid of those hierarchical conceptions. It's not a concept. The whole point of all of this is one thing only. The whole point of life is one thing only: love. And when you share love, no matter in what capacity, love is love.
Such a blessing, all that you're sharing. I just want us to take a breath, just kind of to digest all the wisdom and all that you're sharing. There are probably 10 questions that we haven't had time to get to, so I'm going to try and summarize just a couple. One quick one, well, maybe it was quick, was somebody asked if Jesus and Mary Magdalene, Yeshua and Jesus, or Jesus, Mary Magdalene, were TwinRay. So there's that question, which you may or may not want to answer, but I'll put that out there. I'm going to give you like a few summaries of questions that are out there. There's also a lot of question about managing our feelings and allowing ourselves to have strong emotions, to have even uncomfortable feelings. Again, when we're centered, when we're not in reptile brain, being in compassionate understanding. But any thoughts about the value of allowing ourselves to fully be present to even anger or rage. So there's questions around that. And there's also questions about how to manage discernment, a discernment of, should I stay in a job that's really difficult? Do I stay in it because I'm learning and going through the challenges? Or is it about the difficulties showing me it's time to move on? So questions around discernment around work. And then people had similar questions about discernment with relationship. So I'm kind of giving you the ones that we haven't tackled yet. Okay.
Beautiful.
Let's go with emotions and we'll talk about emotions. If it's valuable to enter and experience the entirety of an emotion. Being centered and at your 12 o'clock does not mean that you cannot express emotions. What it means is that you are absolutely aware of what it is and where it's coming from that is requiring expression. Now, do we believe? We don't have beliefs like this, but let's say that we did. So let's play in the realm of we would believe this over that, which we don't have. But let's take a moment to experience what the fullness of anger would be like. That is an out of control emotion. That is an out of control feeling. Rage, right? And again, doesn't feel good in the body. So don't even like the words necessarily, because we're so attuned to how the body instrument experiences words, experiences frequency, experiences all of that. And that is, sometimes there's work to be done to get there. But if one is going to go into the entirety of an emotion and be completely out of control, what is the benefit of that? And Scott, I'd like to ask you, from your perspective, what is the benefit, or what would be considered a benefit? Because we know there are teachings like that. Mm-hmm. What would be the benefit of that?
So my mentor, Marshall Rosenberg, taught that anytime we have an uncomfortable feeling, let's say anger, because most of us tend to think anger as being bad. We don't use anger as an entitlement and as a weapon to hurt another person, but we use it as a flashlight pointing to an unmet need or an unmet value. Mm-hmm. So by allowing ourselves to acknowledge uncomfortable emotions and to even express them, not in a hurtful way, but as a way of sharing in order to understand kind of what you were saying about triggers. Why am I so angry? Oh, my need for respect hasn't been met, right? My need for fairness or kindness or consideration hasn't been met. So we use our uncomfortable emotions as a way to understand what's going on within us on a deeper level.
Sure. Anger is a mask for sadness. There can be no anger without the depth of despair underneath it. And that depth of despair is actually what you want to get to. You want to find the despair inside that would lead to the experience of anger. But that is not the true emotion, and it can never be the true emotion. So what we say with these questions is, if you absolutely need to experience it, go experience it by yourself.
And you can do it in a healthy manner. You can have an outlet in a healthy way, but that's not what you're trying to get to.
No.
Just by expressing your, if it is anger, for example, and expressing that anger, whether that be through screaming into a pillow, let's just say, if you were to do that, and that's not what you're trying to get to. That may help the body feel lighter. It may feel like if there's a release there, it may feel like, but underneath that, the sadness there, that's what you really need to touch into. Where does that come from? And that deep, deep sadness, that deep psychological despair that's in this unconscious psyche, that is the very program of the individual, the identity of the density, because the ego can never know love. The ego will never know love. The ego is actually a distraction around that. And when we speak about ego, just to be really clear, we're talking about self-image. We're talking about the image of the self, the self-image response of that ego. But at the truest nature of the word ego is just the sense of self, just a sense of I, just as I exist. That's the true nature of the word ego in its neutrality, in its purity. But the Jungian or the psychological, that psychological association with the ego is that self-image. Beneath that is this feeling of sadness, despair, because it's based upon an illusion that it actually exists, and that illusion is what is the actual deep ingrainment, and that has to be excavated. And that it's hard to get there without the steadfastness of really being committed to do that inner work. But it's healthy. We're not talking about being an emotional zombie. I'm only awareness, so I'm only going to stay at no. You fully live in life. You fully express life. But you're just not attached to any of it. That's the difference. You're fully joyful. You're fully happy. You're expressing that, and you're in bliss. Not because like joy is your natural state. Like literally, it's your natural state of being. So you're not emotionally like aloof or detached.
That's not what detachment is. It's not aloofness.
No.
That's not it at all. You are fully in it. You are present.
You're fully engaged.
But the expectations.
Yeah.
And so we say to you, to answer your question, to add another aspect is, what are the expectations that are creating the emotions that are not met?
Yeah. In Love Coach Academy, and some of our love coaches are here today, we teach actually something called the anger iceberg, which is what you were referencing. And I'll send this little image out. We'll just send the recording for today out to everybody. And I'll send this image along with you. And it, on the surface is the anger, but actually anger can be a cover emotion for any of these uncomfortable feelings. Of course, you mentioned sadness, but it can be any feeling that we believe is bad, or we're ashamed. We're ashamed to be embarrassed. We're ashamed to be overwhelmed or insecure. So we use anger as the cover emotion. So anyway, I'll send this image out to everybody, and I'm so glad that you brought that up. I want to acknowledge it's 1 minute until 12. I'm not sure if you turn into pumpkins.
No, we definitely
at the strike of 12. But I know that we do need to wrap up. But I if you don't mind, are you okay with one more question?
We don't mind finishing those questions, and you can add one more as well. So,
okay.
I'll tell you
discernment. I'll tell you what the one more is, and then we can leave it together. And this is from Karuna, and it's a good one. And different people have asked variations of it. Any personal sharing from the development of learning these skills through your actual relationship with each other?
Okay. So let's touch on the discernment piece. Like if you're in a job, don't feel that the job's serving your soul. It feels a little bit, challenging and rhetorical, you may not want to leave this job because there's some security things that you need to consider. Mm-hmm. And this is just one example, and that can be used in many different aspects of life. But really, when you change the way that you see something, like say, for example, you think that you're going to a job and you're doing this, offer it to God. Offer everything back to God. Like whether you're cleaning the dishes, whether you're cleaning your house, whether you're going to a job, whether you're driving,
paying your bills,
like offer that to God. So it's not what you do, it's how you do it. So offer it back to that source of love, the all-loving one. Everything that you do, you offer it there. So allow your dharma be dharmic. So whatever that may be, offer it as an offering. Whatever your action is, make that an offering.
And you will notice how it shifts immediately.
It will shift. Now, when you're in a job that's not fulfilling, it's not bringing you, that's a message for you to look, what's in you. Because if your outer life is not aligned to the way that you wish it to be, it's because your inner life is not in alignment, because your outer life is just an expression of your inner life. And this doesn't mean you quit your job and you leave this and you run away. Of course, there's some
We're not advocating for that.
No,
please don't go do that.
There's responsibilities that you have to. There's the response, the ability to respond, responsibility, the ability to respond in those three different ways, basically. And when you respond in a sattvic way, where there's a purity and a joy and a devotion, or there's a rajasic way, which is more seeing the blessing, like the fact that you have a job. What a blessing that you actually can be in service in this way. There's many people that probably don't have jobs. And so looking at changing the perspective, or if you see it in the shadow tendency as like, oh, I don't like this, I don't want to do this. And, so you get to decide basically. But if you offer it to God as an offering, your activity, then it changes. It's not about what you do, it's how you do it. And naturally, as you become in contact with that deeper connection with inside you to that God source, then your outer life will change. There'll be synchronicities and serendipities that change, and you just have this feeling and this inclination like, no, actually, or there's a different offering that comes to you. And so discernment is discerning the actual intention that you have in what you're doing. If you're just going to a job just so you can survive, then you're only going to feel at that level of inadequacy. It's not going to fulfill you in totality. But if you're doing it from a space of purity and intention, that you're offering whatever you do, and there's a blessing, there's appreciation, there's gratitude, then that will be the very experience that you have as well.
And, if you truly believe, if you are one who truly believes that all is in perfection, and that every moment that you are living is in order to bring you to your next level of evolution and involution within you, the evolution within you, then you will realize that job, if you are still going through this role play, then you haven't completed the lesson that began it to be, that conceived it. And so the question then remains, and again, if this was us, this is, I still seem to be in this situation. What have I learned thus far? Okay, right, I've learned that I don't like to work with this person and that person. No, that's not the kind of lesson that I'm talking about. Return back inside. What have I really learned about myself? Well, I've learned that I have grace when there are challenges. Okay, that's good. I've learned that maybe I'm not as graceful as I'd like to be when there are challenges. Okay, well, that's really important as well. And again, this is all about excavating. This path that we walk, this path that we teach, is all about deeper and deeper excavation. It always returns you back inside of you. So if you're in a job that you don't want to be in any longer, and yet the universe is not supporting this, the universe, you in your higher aspects are not supporting this for some reason for you to be released from it. The question is, why? And this is where you go and you find out what you've actually learned thus far, and you ask if there's more for you to learn, and have it revealed to you. And then once you have been able to learn and see why, the purpose for being in that job to begin with, and then bring yourself to such gratitude for it, and again in that offering to God, that the entire service vehicle that has been given, and every action for that job, as you've offered it to God, you fill yourself with gratitude for it. You will notice the magic that happens. And that is that all of a sudden things start to dissolve and other opportunities present themselves to you, ready to raise you and lift you into the next level of your involution where you're ready for. Once you've completed that.
The audio on your end has gotten a little bit wonky. It's not an internet issue. It seems to be a microphone issue. I have checked and everybody else is muted. It's the same thing that happened a little bit earlier. And I noticed you reached over and adjusted your microphone and it got better. There's like a...
Worse? Sounds more intense at the moment.
Yeah, it's gotten, the last 2 minutes, it's gotten pretty intense. So
We changed our microphone output. Does that help?
Is that assisting, beloveds?
no. It sounds yeah. I mean, we can hear you, but there's a pretty
Sounds like
strong
completion.
Well,
echo.
it can't be us, beloved, because when we mute ourselves, we can still hear it.
I've gone through and checked and everybody else is muted.
It's just likely an anomaly that
Yeah.
happens around us.
I mean, we can
Because
pause our microphone and it will still play.
Right.
we're
Okay. Well, again, we'll just pretend that it is Great Spirit
frequency.
letting itself be known.
The hum of creation.
Yes. So would you like to remind us, beloved, of the final question that you asked?
The final question was if there is an example you can give in your relationship, how you've used your relationship in kind of more of a human way to learn these lessons or to cultivate the consciousness that you're in.
Yes. So, putting love first is really the only manner in which we respond, and making life a ceremony, like waking up in the morning, your morning ritual, your day ritual, whether that is being of service in whatever capacity, your evening ritual, like allowing that life itself to be a ceremony. And then putting love first is putting the other first, you know.
We can talk about the game that we play.
Yes, and we'll share this one game that we play that changes everything. So there's this, when you're in a relationship, if you play this game, it will change your entire life. And this is one thing that we do. We play this game.
Okay, so the game is who can make the other happier? Who can essentially just serve more? Serve in the smallest little, for most people, insignificant ways. The tiniest little details to the greatest details. Who can ignite that more in the other? And we play these games because, well, they're fun to play, and because we actually enjoy being able to share them with people, with the beloveds. And so we create these sort of experiences to be able to teach, to be able to give of our wisdom as we can.
Yeah, and it's not like it's a fun, joyful, dubious tendency to just express happiness. Who can make the other happier, not because the other isn't happy already.
We're both always happy.
It's sharing that joy, and that's really what love is. Love is a inner radiance, and as you're radiating that true nature of yourself, you're both in each other's glow. You're sharing in each other's glow. You're bathing in each other's glow. You're not trying to have more light from the other or something else. You're bathing in each other's overflow of that joy. So these things come natural of, how can I serve you, my love? How can I be of service in that way? And, doing little things, being chivalrous, in every way possible, because it's just, it's a way that love can be expressed in the game of the human experience. And so when it comes to tools that we use, we only see ways to help shift one's attention by the very questions that we're asked. Because in our life, we don't really need these experiences, but when we have students that ask, okay, how do you do this? Then there are certain things. Well, if there is a perceptual problem, because there actually is no problems, there actually isn't an issue, but if one is perceiving that there is, then here is a solution to that. So that's generally how we operate, is like whatever your questions may be or what it can be of service to you, then we'll find a way to help bring out.
Which is what we've done today. When a question's been asked, I go, okay, well, if the situation was planted, we would do this, we would operate in this way.
But in the true reality, there's no problems. there's nothing to when you're there, you're there. So, but if there was a perception of a problem, and if there was something, then these could be things and tools that can help you point back to that reality of love, which is frictionless, problemless.
Beautiful. Well, we look forward to all getting to that beautiful state of consciousness. And thank you for playing such a beautiful role in helping to guide us there. If it's a yes/no question, people are still asking if Yeshua, Jesus, and Mary Magdalene were another example of TwinRay.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And the truth is when there has been great avatars that express that the truth, and they come at pivotal times in the collective story, that's really what it is, and a physical representation, but there's also an energetic component to this as well, where the energetic template of the earth, the ley lines, there's a specific shift that happens in the earth as well, which are known as the twins in ancient prophecies, in the Hopi prophecies, and there's many different indigenous prophecies, and there's also different civilizations that have named these times where we're moving into a golden age, we're moving into a new cycle of time, where there's these twins, where these what we call cosmic dragon lines, that when they come in as well. So there's a macro element to this, there's a micro element to this as well, but the simple answer is yes.
And when we came together in this live stream, it was the day that had been measured where the cosmic dragon lines came in at the exact place that we were as well, which was in Giza.
Yeah, so there was some synchronicities.
So
yeah, in the story of our life and our world service, there was some synchronicities that we didn't actually know about at the time until a scientist told us a few months later.
And also when we came together, that was also the day when it was also revealed that because of the TwinRay incarnating on the planet, that would birth 140, not 1,000 divine unions, but 144 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is why TwinRay is considered the mother and father of divine union.
And just to express a little bit more about this, because this is beautiful to know, is that as the planetary system, the planetary consciousness and the collective system evolves, the first level of reality is on the path. It's a solo path. It's generally where the collective's in a solo path. As the world goes through her ascension journey as well, then there's divine unions. Then there's a shared journey of the spiritual awakening. There's a divine unions that happen. There's more divine unions that start coming.
That accelerate each other.
Yeah, and they start raising the vibration of the collective as well. And that's also a representation of the grids that are anchoring on the planet.
And the twin flames.
And the third level of that is when the whole collective communities start ascending together. They start unifying together in their collective expression. And then it's the whole planet. The fourth level is when the entire planet ascends, and there's a whole Edenic expression on the planet. The whole Garden of Eden is re-remembered, re-dreamed, and actually co-created as an awakened and illuminated and realized collective civilization. And that is the highest expression in the universe itself at a planetary level, for everyone on the planet to be self-realized or liberated at that level. And so where we are at in our journey, that's why we have shared with our community that the golden age will be experienced first in community. It won't be experienced at the collective level. Well, first it will actually be experienced within yourself, because the golden age is actually is actually you, and then it comes together in community, or partnership and relationship, and then community, and then the golden age is seen in different communities. So there's a progression of the evolution of becoming a cosmic citizen at an individual expression, in relationship, in collective expression as well. And so if that's of any interest and any help to understand the greater picture, we hope that serves and supports each one of you.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for helping to guide us into that beautiful direction and the incredible role you're playing in our world, and how blessed we are to be connecting with you so intimately. Thank you so very much. Deborah?
Nice.
And I think that was an amazing summary of why we're even having this conversation, just to really understand, beginning with us, and then the awakening continues till we're all together. And that's really part of the mission of the Global Peace Tribe, is really to help us all wake up and be in a relationship, as well as this amazing session that we had here with you, knowing that relationship is so important as we are serving and helping each other towards this relationship. And then at the very end, we get the big party of the whole world, the whole humanity ascending together. So it's an incredible vision, our understanding, our transmission that you just shared. So thank you so much.
Thank you, beloved Deborah. It's been a great joy for us to spend sacred presence.
Blessing for all.
Yeah, with each one of you.
We've had people here from as far away as Iceland, New Zealand, all over the world. So it's really beautiful. And I do want to just briefly remind everybody that tonight it's Saturday Night Alive for the Global Peace Tribe. And it's all about honoring our body temple. And we're going to hear from Deepak Chopra and a wonderful woman, Dr. Heather Sanderson, some really wonderful things about how we can take better care of our bodies, including some incredible new options that have just been recently discovered. So please join us tonight. If you have not registered, go to globalpeacetribe.com and register, and then you can come on into our early Zoom room show at 5:30. So please, we hope to see all of you tonight. And we will send the recording of this out to everybody probably tomorrow. And again, thank you so much, beautiful TwinRay, Shekinah and Sananda. Thank you everybody for joining us. And let's all have a beautiful, beautiful weekend. Let's just digest all that we got this morning. Go for a walk and digest it. So much wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you, beloveds. And just as a closing sharing, all of you that are here today, we honor each and every one of you. And we just want to take a moment just to acknowledge that each one of you, wherever you are at on the journey, who you truly are as love divine, you're always that. You always will be that. And you always shall return to that. So this journey is not about adding to who you are. It's just remembering and returning to what you've always been. And we see you, We love you,
Mm.
and we cherish this moment with each one of you. And may this moment ripple out into all moments of your life to witness the beauty and the sanctity of love itself.
Namaste. Thank you so much.